Hi, this is Nick Tierce, and you're listening to Inspirado Projecto.
Ladies and gentlemen, creatures and monsters, extraterrestrials and invisible entities we have yet to address. Welcome to another exciting episode of Inspirado Projecto. This is particularly exciting because we're going to be talking with Nick Tierce and Steve Peters, two masterminds behind the Mesmer and Braid ARG. For those of you who do not know what ARG is, that is alternate reality game. It's kind of a Dungeons and Dragons meets a video game mixed with a choose-your-own-adventure kind of situation. It's like dumping out the imagination box and putting you into that reality, making the reality around you, tailor-fitting it, so to speak. It's beyond explanation. You just have to experience it to know what I'm talking about. Go to mesmerandbraid.com. Fill out the collaborator test. It is an extraordinary companion and compendium to the and collaboration with the HoloVista video game, the app. Check it out. It's out there. I've played it. It's phenomenal. I'm going to replay it. There are things I still have not yet solved, some mysteries within it. But you'll love it. The sound, the colors, and this Mesmer and Braid ARG, it is in addition to it, and you will meet some exciting characters, one of which is Blurbex49. If you've got TikTok, I would say open up a separate tab, go to TikTok, look up Blurbex49. That is BLURBEX49er. Follow him immediately. All right, folks, we're going to listen to a very fun fact by Henry D. Horse, and then we're on to the interview.
David Lynch personally started a campaign in Hollywood to get Laura Dern an Oscar nomination for her performance in Inland Empire. He sat on the side of the road with a cow during this campaign, which was, unfortunately, unsuccessful. Stay tuned to Inspirado Projecto for more fun facts.
Fantastic. Is this Nick Tierce? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, you got it. Hi, Kurt. How's it going?
Oh, man, this is great. This is so cool to be able to interview you guys, and I'm glad you're able to sneak in here at the last second. This is really cool.
Yeah. I'm glad Steve gave me a heads up. This will be fun.
Man, I just got to say, it's just so cool that you guys created this experience, and for it to be able to come out during the quarantine,
right?
And for something so joyful to be invented during this time, and it balances out the all the screaming and yelling of everything. It balances out this very cooperative community that's all encouraging towards each other, and all a bunch of just puzzlementarians, which I think is just awesome.
Well, that's what's interesting is it's like, a lot of that credit has to go to the actual HoloVista team because they set the tone for the whole universe. It's a colorful, bright, although very emotional story world that they've created. And just to be invited, Steve and I being invited to play in that universe, we drafted a lot of residual joy off of what they had already done. And, my own little soapbox is having for years wanted more immersive and or interactive and or puzzly stuff that wasn't so grimdark, wasn't so horror based or strictly adult in content. And so when these opportunities do not come around very often, and so to have a team doing a project which honestly before the ARG was even a sprinkle in anyone's eye, I was excited about HoloVista. I saw the announcement like everybody else did, and I thought, oh man, yes, finally, just the vaguely kind of architectural themes. I am personally very responsive to that kind of thing. And so I was just like, oh, thank God these people behind it are also sympathetic to what is become kind of the lost art of alternate reality games,
Oh man, it's so interesting. Everything just blended together just perfectly. Oh, and here we got Steve Peters, who just joined us on the line. Steve, Nick and I were just talking about how you guys, sort of received the announcement of HoloVista like the rest of the world did. And this was before you guys were included with the Mesmer and Braid ARG, right? That's
right.
So did you guys get a chance to play HoloVista before, so you could like really get acquainted with that world, or did you hear about the announcement and they go, oh, we want you guys to do the ARG aspect. Don't worry about what we're doing behind the scenes here while we develop this. I mean, how did that work?
Well, initially, the Aconite folks contacted me. I've been an advisor for them for the last couple of years, and they said they wanted to basically do an ARG to promote HoloVista. And I think we both got access to it, early access, to familiarize ourselves. But I don't think, Nick, were you able to? Nick's not on iOS.
Yeah, I actually the day they sent us the test flight link for a very rough version of the game. This was right at the beginning that we were commenced. I ran down to Target and I bought an iPod Touch.
That's great.
So that I could play it, and because I was so curious about it just as a player that I thought, oh man, if we have any chance of doing an alternate reality game for this, I have got to play this thing. So no, I made sure that I had an iOS device available to me because it was just too tantalizing. I was so excited by the early imagery that they had released that I was on the hype train very early on that one.
Oh my gosh, man! It looks like it's like a world within the world of Tron or something. There's this element of neon, and then when you add that really unique soundtrack to it, which is almost like elevator dubstep or something. It's so soft and almost like a lullaby, but there's like these dubstep qualities. I mean, it's just interesting. The whole thing works together, and it just totally makes sense that there would be an ARG connected with this thing. It just totally makes sense. Now, with that really kick-ass, is that a scarab beetle? What kind of kick-ass beetle?
That is a Hercules beetle.
Oh, that's right, the Hercules beetle.
Yes.
What? Okay, so was that for? Did they tell you that this is something we need to create, or did you see that within the game and you go, ooh, I got to make a real life one of those? How did that come about?
I think we looked at the one environment in the game where you were going to be in Mesmer and Braid headquarters in the lobby, and there was this idea very early on that we wanted to have something from the mobile game be in the alternate reality game as the kind of last object that the urban explorer would find. And we went back and forth on a lot of different things, but no, it was in the game first. And we kind of cast it as, okay, we want something that will be an object from the game that will functionally unlock that final recording that delivers the story aspect, but what could be an interesting item? And we tried a bunch of different ideas, but we just kept coming back to that beetle because it was just such a compelling, weird looking thing.
Oh man. Yes.
Yeah. Typically when we'll do an ARG to promote something, one of the first things we do is just try and look for kind of cross-pollination points, things that are in the game that we can use in ours. We go through the assets and say, we had a challenge in this case because there was a different timeline, but at the same time, any sort of integration, the first thing we'll do is pour over all the existing materials and say, what can we integrate into the ARG in a cool way? Are there characters? Are there props? Are there just looks? And the beetle really kind of jumped out at us as something that would be cool, and we hoped that they had a 3D, a model of it that we could, run off of. And I think Nick ended up just kind of doing it. How did you do it, Nick? Did you do it totally by hand?
Well, we tried.
Did you use a 3D model to start with?
We tried to get it 3D printed, but everywhere that we sent it out to quote, it was not built to be 3D printed. It was a game. It was a game asset through and through. And so the quotes that came through to print it either said, we simply can't print this, or it was an astronomical amount of money to print it out. So I just ended up sculpting the beetle by hand. And
whoa,
yeah, that was.
What did you use? Was that paper mache or sculpting?
It was just traditional modeling clay on top of a kind of armature out of wire and foil. Traditional kind of sculpting techniques. But yeah, it was. I did have the 3D model to print out at full scale on paper and use as a guide for the sculpt. But that was something that it was just, there were so many points at which I thought, well, maybe we should just choose something else than the beetle. But I just kept going back to personally, I was very invested in having this moment of a guy dig up a box and find this bizarre beetle inside.
Yeah, we thought it was cool, just kind of a WTF factor at the end, right? It's like, what does he dig up? Because that's always it's like, what is the finale going to be, and what is going to feel satisfying for the audience and weird, and what are we leading up to? And the beetle just always felt very cool. It's like he digs this thing up, and it's like, what? Totally unexpected, right? So I think that was it too. I mean, out of all the things you could guess he would dig up, a beetle is the last you would never,
yeah, with a secret message hiding inside. I mean, it just kept going. It was just the fractals just kept going. Now, before we continue, because what I've noticed on when I use this app, sometimes if people try to call in, sometimes it'll kick us off. So if you want to put on your do not disturb sign, if you guys got that on your phone, it's probably good idea to put that on there, so that way if texts or phone calls come through, it doesn't knock you off. Now, to go along with what you were saying there, finding those cross-pollination things, that is something that has always appealed to me, the idea of bringing something into a seemingly well, I guess in the case that I'm going to use, a 2D universe, and bringing it into reality, which was when they did it with The Simpsons, where they made the Quickie Marts. Right. They made all the 7-Elevens in a real life. You could actually get the donuts. You could actually get Buzz Cola. It was like, whoa, this is it made you feel like you were really a part of that universe. And that's how it felt with this, seeing that beetle out there. Oh, and then on top of that, inside, oh God, there's so many little Easter eggs, and it's like, I don't know what to talk about without spoiling anything, what not to talk about. But there was a part where I was very excited, where I saw Blurbex make a guest appearance in there within the HoloVista.
Yeah, that was something we did not know. We did not know that was going to happen when we chose the beetle. When we chose the beetle, we thought this will be our one kind of big tether and into the game world. Little did we know that the door was going to swing the other way, because the people at Aconite making HoloVista were so happy with how the alternate reality game was going that they wanted to incorporate some of our assets into their game, which was the highest compliment we could possibly receive.
Oh my God! Man.
I think there's actually I haven't noticed that anybody noticed the things in the lobby. I don't know that anybody posted about that. We were able to have some additional ARG things put into the game.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, anyone who goes and kind of looks around the Mesmer and Braid lobby will see some assets that were integral to the beginning of our game, the alternate reality game.
Well,
yeah, I don't think anybody's noticed that, or at least they haven't
I
posted
love
about
seeing the pictures of like the glow right and the
that was it.
All those things up.
Yeah, that's what we were implying. Yeah, that's the one.
So, those, like, that was just like such a joy of seeing, like, because then it gave me this idea, like, okay, someone is paying attention to what's even going on in the chats in the Discord room too, because I saw things that people had ideas, that's like, oh, what if this or what if that? I mean, you got these kinds of sleuths out there who are flipping images upside down and running things backwards.
Oh yes,
yes. And it's like, what the how does someone even think? First of all, to do that, and then second of all, for the other person on the other side who leaves that Easter egg for that person to find, thinking that, oh, there's going to be someone out there who knows how to do this, so I'm going to leave this little thing in here, and then they're going to come across that. Like there's like in Discord, there was someone who said something, oh, what if we do this thing or do that thing? I ended up seeing those exact comments within the HoloVista video game too. So I was just like, there's another one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they put some stuff about, what did they, about a Caesar cipher or something like that? Yeah, some fun stuff. There were some nods back to the ARG players. We try, there were some, we have the benefit of when you're playing these things, it feels like you're playing alone. But in reality, like Nick and I and the team are basically breathing over everybody's shoulders, looking at everything, watching everything they do. Because, we just need to be responsive, and we want, it's like jazz. It's like call and response, right? If we can react to some things that the players are doing. And so I know that in doing that, there end up being some kind of MVP players that kind of stick out and do an amazing things, that whether it's like solving a cipher that we never anticipated being solved at all, to, setting up, doing big guides that are helping people, big stories so far of things that are, people are doing, or, so I think they wanted to shout out to some of the kind of the the real active players in kind of fun, subtle ways in the app, which I thought was great, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, that dance back and forth between us and the community playing the game is a real opportunity because it's a real-time thing. That doesn't always come up. It's also a challenge in some ways because that core player base, many of them had come in having played other alternate reality games, but they're playing right alongside people who have never experienced anything like this. And so from a design perspective, it's very difficult to set those expectations up front because we inherit a lot of expectations from previous experiences. And when you inherit expectations, but you want to do an experience that maybe sometimes plays against those expectations, knowing how you can set that concept up in universe without breaking the fourth wall and kind of telling the players where the boundaries of the box are and where you can play, where's the magic circle, where's the barrier, and it's always, you never know how that's going to go until the game starts. And so we had to be very responsive to, okay, they are starting to break the website because they think that's how you play an ARG, because that's how other ARGs have been created for you to play them. And so we had to kind of reinforce everywhere the kind of base resolution of our experience in terms of an experiential concept. Like, okay, how will I be able to touch this thing? And so I feel like we had a couple things at the beginning where we were able to reinforce, look, you're not going to be able to dip below the water at that level because our experience exists up on top of the water, and we are always going to keep it here. And that's not to say that you won't be able to dive into the story aspect of it, but in terms of the mechanics of how you engage with that story, there might not be those same expectations you're coming in with available to you here. And so that's always the trick of that dance, but it's also a huge opportunity. So I'm very happy with where we ended up.
Yeah, to me, that's the fun of it. To me, that is part of what makes it unique and fun, is that we're not just shipping a game. It's like we're helping them at the beginning. It's very much an educational process. Like we're teaching them how our version of the game is going to work without teaching them, without like a set of instructions. We try and invisibly teach them where our boundaries are, where the game's boundaries are, invisible guide rails. We don't want it to feel like, because we want it to feel real. For me, the goal is, like you said, make it feel like the story is actually taking place in the same world that we live in. That's my goal for everything that I do like this. But that creates issues. So you got to find ways to subtly, covertly, signal what's in and out of games. Sometimes you have to break that curtain and be overt when they don't when they don't seem to get the message. In the past, we've had players try and, reset the passwords on certain people's American Express accounts and stuff like that, thinking that they were in game, and we had to kind of very quickly, sometimes you just need to shout it and be, non-subtle. Right. But in this case, we could stay, and plus, we didn't know who our audience was going to be. We wanted to be very approachable for a new audience who's never done this. And it's always like, let's wait and see how many kind of veteran ARG players are going to come along. And that will help us determine what we need to do, how we need to respond to things, how difficult things can be. And so a lot of it is kind of, did we retool some stuff after we saw what the audience makeup was going to be? Yes, absolutely. If it was all new players, it would have looked a little different, maybe,
Wow. Well, what's interesting too is because it's happening in real time, you guys get to see what's going on and hear their theories and everything. I imagine it's probably just like with the writers of Lost, and they get to hang out in the forums and see what people's thoughts are.
Similar.
Which way is it going to go, or what could be here? And here you guys are hanging out in the Discord rooms, and this offers so many opportunities for characters that are planted there to kind of go, oh, I already checked that out, and that's it. Just won't go any further. I've noticed, so it gives you the opportunity to kind of create an alias.
There are some people that do that. For me, and I think Nick too, we have kind of a philosophical line that we draw, that we won't invade player space.
Oh, yeah, we never had to do that on this one.
No, we never posted.
Oh, that's
we
cool.
watched in Discord. We never. I don't think I said word one in Discord.
No, we wouldn't.
God,
we wouldn't even upvote correct answers.
No.
Oh my God. That's brilliant. Did that take a lot of it must be just like watching a person play a video game. You're wondering what are they thinking next? Where are they going to go next? Oh, wow, he opened a door I never saw before. So was that interesting for you guys to kind of watch that sort of video game unfold of the ARG in front of your eyes? I mean, you must have just been giggling all the time going, oh, they're going in that direction.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to me, that's the fun, and there is a portion of we need to learn, teach our cohorts, like our partners at Aconauts, saying, listen, you're going to really have to resist the urge to help, resist the urge to make comments, just let them, because really, I mean, for me, it's easy to want to give hints until I remember that if I give a hint for a puzzle, I'm robbing somebody of the joy of solving it without that hint. So, that really helps me. We'll have to make sure something is really, really broken before we'll kind of step in. And we'll do it in an in-story, in-game sort of way. We would never say, hey, have you guys tried this? Posing out with the player.
Right.
Because sock puppet accounts to me are usually really obvious. It's then it becomes a game of, then it also shifts the game. And the game becomes, ooh, who among us is the mole? Right. So
that's a good way of putting it.
It changes the dynamic, and it usually opens a can of worms, and it usually doesn't end up in a good place when that happens. And we've both watched instances of that happen where things kind of implode because all of a sudden, players get suspicious, and it becomes a big who is among us game, right?
Right. That becomes the game that you're not trying to get them to focus.
Right.
Gosh, it must be so when I went into the Discord channel and I started looking at what some of these, I didn't even realize there existed this whole culture of people who are just top quality ARG players. I didn't realize until I got into the Discord room, and I'm like, holy cow, these guys are playing a game that a heightened level of this. It's like watching really good ping pong players play backwards or something, and you're going, what the hell's happening here? This is incredible. I would never even think to do that. People are inverting images, and they're doing they're finding secret passwords. And so how did you guys balance that with the release? Okay, gosh, there's so many questions here, so many avenues. Okay, knowing that there was a time limit before HoloVista was released, how did you know how much time out would be a good time to give people the opportunity to solve all the puzzles, and tie it up right at the end? How'd you know how to pace that out?
Nick, you want to?
Yeah, I can take that one. For us, it was a situation where we knew when the game was coming out roughly. There were a few juggling moments of the release date changing that we had to account for. But in general, we knew roughly when it was going to come out and roughly how long we wanted the experience to be and kind of what the pace of that would be, like how frequently we were going to drop new content. And that quickly became established just based on looking at the calendar and dividing up how many beats of story we wanted to deliver. Roughly every 4 days, we were going to drop new content. And, just from previous experience, I mean, you want a certain level of complexity to grow as the experience goes on. However, we knew that with a strong enough group of core players that they were going to solve anything we threw at them faster than we ever expected it. So the challenge actually becomes not necessarily how do we get it all in there, but how do we build in natural breaks that will mean that they can stop, know that they've solved this week's this day's content, and that they are waiting for the next installment. And that we ended up deciding would largely be when they needed to throw content back at Blurbex, the character, and have him go find something else. And so we generally said, okay, there's going to be things that they unlock, some of which will be mostly narrative, building out the story of the Mesmer and Braid history, which honestly was the priority of this entire arc, was delivering that kind of nuanced exploration of that story world. And the way you would unlock that was through the puzzles. I'm fully aware that there are some players who come into these experiences strictly looking for a mechanical experience of solving one puzzle that leads to another, but hopefully we found a way to integrate that with the narrative. That's always the trick of this, is finding the balance between mechanical exploration and the actual kind of story we're trying to tell through that. And, we found a way to do it by saying, look, either you're going to find something that you don't have all the pieces of, that this character needs to go find in the story world that only he has access to physically, or it's the other way around, where he needs to send you something that fills in, we wanted to have that ping pong back and forth between, hey, look, in a traditional alternate reality game, we might actually be able to send people out into the real world to find actual dead drops and caches and all these different things. But since we can't do that during a pandemic, we're going to have a character who is doing that, boots on the ground, kind of physically exploring a space, and hopefully that will lend an air of reality that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And so, it was mostly just pacing that out as, okay, we want them to end at this understanding narratively. We want them to know this. What's the most compelling way to dole that out in pieces and tell pieces of the story that build on itself and say, okay, this couple is married and one of them has taken a back seat, and there's a drama with the board, and we can just, how do we stack that on top of each other in a natural way that seems like, okay, they're going to come to this final understanding that will set the stage for the themes of the mobile game. That was always the goal, is how do we give them a kind of parallel thematic experience that will get them in the headspace of what themes the game is going to be talking about.
Wow. I mean, that was such a great idea. Well, first of all, just the fact that this whole experience came out during the quarantine, so it gave people a lot of some fun, being able to use their imagination. And then number two, the fact that yes, Blurbex was out there, which I thought was great, that there was a history of his TikToks of him going out there to these urban, the urbex sort of hashtag urbex areas. And then all of a sudden there's a Randonautica, which is great because that coincided so perfectly too with this huge spotlight on Randonautica, and everybody going, whoa, where's this led me to now? So it was just really cool to see how fast the Blurbex account just got so many views and got so many people curious about this. And I would love to see how that coincides with the amount of people who went on to download HoloVista. It'd be really, really kick-ass, because we can see how influential TikTok is. And just imagine how many people were brought into Discord through those shenanigans.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of a challenge, because we wanted to stay in game. We never wanted to be like, oh, and this is part of this thing for HoloVista, and here's a link to the app to download, right? We didn't want it to be that. So for people to find that, they needed to kind of take a couple steps, and a certain amount. And I always look at it like, we talk about the inverted pyramid, where, the big bulk of players are very casual and they just kind of look at the content, they watch it. They could have watched Blurbex's videos and enjoyed them. But then, there's a percentage, like 10% of the people will take another step and go, okay, what's this about? And we did notice a lot of people all his other videos, got lots of more views then as well. And then we look at kind of the tip of that spear, that smaller percentage of people that will go to the final step and go, okay, all right, what is this for real? And let's really dig into this. And they would find the Mesmer and Braid site and they would take that test. And we definitely did see a big upswing in kind of those tests taken. So it really did. We were able to migrate a lot of people, at least that far. And to us, that was kind of the doorway into the ARG. And as far as they went past, beyond that was a little bit tougher to track. but that was kind of our gate that we got them to, and it definitely worked to a large extent. And it would have done more if we'd have been more like typical marketing, going brought to you by blah blah blah. But it was really this way. To me, it was really rewarding for the people that did that, because they're like, oh, I've discovered this thing and it's cool, and I think that we definitely moved the needle on the HoloVista launch, as far as creating awareness, creating buzz. A lot of people had never heard of it. ARG players had never heard of it. A lot of people left comments on the App Store that they came to the app through the ARG. So that's really great. Yeah, so man. that's like honey to our ears. Is that the right metaphor?
You don't pour honey in your ears, Steve?
I don't know. What is it? Yeah, that's music to our ears, honey to our wounds, whatever. I'm losing. Hey, it's COVID. I'm losing, I lose words. I don't have conversations with adults very often. But yeah, I mean, to me, and compound on that is, because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic, people are more apt to do stuff online, and people are really hungry for this sort of thing. And I've said this over and over, that we've been really busy since March, and I've done similar projects for other folks, and the response has been way beyond projections, because people are just starving out there for stuff to do. They're locked in their places, and they don't have digital fun things to do. And we wanted this to be something that would be a nice escape and promote that game at the same time. So, and I think we won on both of those.
You guys totally. I mean, it was just amazing how well the universe just kind of fell along in line with your guys' imaginations here. Because sure, you're thinking, oh, the dream would be to have these people out there searching for these things. Let's hide some geocaches. So you go out and investigate this stuff. But the cool thing is, next best thing is they get to live vicariously through Blurbex, who's out there, and
he was their avatar.
And oh, dude, it was just so, totally. Like he's the avatar you're playing in the video game. And it was just so cool, because the fact that he would reference you. Okay, so you'd see that sort of like cross-pollination of the people who are in the Discord rooms now making comments on Blurbex's page, and then referring back to a Discord page. So so now there's this question mark, and then going, oh, thanks to Yankee White, he told me this information from Twitter. So then people who are watching are go, oh, what the heck is this Twitter? Who's this? What's this all about? And then when he's like, oh yeah, my friends told me about the Mesmer and Braid thing, I figured out what the hell, I might as well sign up for this collaborator test thing, whatever this is. And then it's great, because then people are like, wait, what is this? And maybe I should investigate that too. So it was just such a wonderful beacon to those people who love finding Easter eggs, and to those people who love hiding Easter eggs. And you accomplished it all. I mean, it was
thanks.
Just so rewarding so satisfying to watch unfold, and to see people just perplexed with the puzzles and trying to figure stuff out, and going, oh, we can't wait to tell Blurbex about this one. And it was just, oh man.
That was fun for us too. The direction of that flow that you're describing was actually only half of what we kind of set up for ourselves as a structure at the very beginning, which is to say the flow of, oh, mysterious TikTok leads you to this website. I'm going to take this test, and hopefully funnels them down to, oh, wow, this is the HoloVista universe. Let me install this app and play this game. That was the one direction of it. But if we were going to do only that and basically reduce ourselves to being just a viral campaign promoting the game, there would be different decisions we would have made in the design of the experience that probably would have been a little bit more in the traditional alternate reality game structure. But we also had this idea that was very much appreciated by Aconite when they were building the game. Look, that will exist for the period of the game being live. But what if we could design it in such a way that people who know nothing about it, when they play the mobile game on their own, and it's been out for, say, 5 years, what if we just kept everything live and we maintained it and designed it in such a way that they could replay it in a sense, not live and not necessarily linearly, but the flow in that direction comes in the completely opposite way. They start at HoloVista, they find Mesmer and Braid, and then they find Blurbex. So Blurbex is both the end and the beginning, depending on where the player is starting. So the
and
idea
that is happening. We're watching tests continue to be taken.
Oh, wow.
Those that gatekeeper. I mean, at a healthy pace, there's still new people coming in every day.
Gosh, man, you've tied the audiences up into like a bow of infinity, because no matter, they're just chasing their own tail. It's beautiful. They're chasing Blurbex's tail. B-A-L-E.
well,
Very
and
nice.
that was why we didn't have Blurbex to any intense degree recap the story information that the players unlocked on the website, because if this was just a live as you go event, I think Blurbex probably would have posted recap videos about, oh wow, this place was burned down on this date, and he would have made it to where you could just watch the TikTok and be completely caught up. But we thought, well, wait a minute, if people are coming back and looking at this, if we just don't have him say too much specifics about that, the way that what he finds helps to unlock assets on the Mesmer and Braid backend, that doesn't need to go away. Like, you can always unlock that stuff. You can always call the phone number and say those passwords in the right order and hear the final message. Like, there's nothing that has to be live about that. You can always pretend to be an Indiana Jones going into the details of this. And so I'm very personally satisfied that we were able to thread that needle, because it was thinking forwards and backwards in time with every decision that we made.
Gosh, how fun and amazing. I mean, it's just like having all those little foreshadowings then to come to play, and for people to come across those. And plus, I mean, there are so many more folders to open on the Mesmer and Braid website. There's a whole history. You know, it's so funny. The beautiful thing about about history is that there's always a lot of it that you can always dive into that's never been discovered before. So it's so great, because like you'll see in TV shows where they're doing a flashback or a flash forward, but they're not telling you what it is or what it isn't. And now you're like, oh, okay, there's now another piece of the puzzle. And with all of those unopened folders yet, I mean, gosh, that could reveal even other crazy information. And maybe there's a secret diary that was published, which you guys can put out. And I mean, God, there are so many. I want to see a Blurbex action figure, you know? So I think there's
a giant pair of yellow gloves.
Thing could go in.
Hey, if if HoloVista gets to a level of success that necessitates a sequel, or at least not a traditional sequel, but expanding the universe of Mesmer and Braid, I think Steve and I would be very open to jumping back into that universe should the opportunity present itself.
Yeah, and we left little conduits, little plugs that we could plug stuff. You know, there's like you said, there's ways to add on if we wanted to.
Well, that's one of the brilliant things about cliffhangers and leaving that mystery there. Like, I remember reading an article one time about David Lynch. He goes, I like to leave every movie with about a 35% mystery at the end. Where it's like almost everything's tied up, and then there's all these loose ends. Like, oh yeah, but what about that? Ooh, what about this? So there's like all these little cliffhanger possibilities that it can go in, and it's just you're right, man. This could just keep going and going, and you guys put so much effort into making those blueprints, and the whole backstory. Man, it could go in so many directions, and you guys, like, it makes me wonder how long you guys have worked together on other projects, because you guys have a great synchronistic. It seems like you guys are sharing the same brain space. How long
we met at ArgFest 2014. And we worked together for the first time when Steve put out the bat signal at Niantic Labs when they were still at Google in 2015, or excuse me, late 2014.
Yeah,
it was winter 2014, and that was our first. We spent 8 wonderful months on an alternate reality game called Endgame Ancient Truth, which was tied into a mobile app which never manifested.
Holy cow. But you had so many ideas from that. I'm sure they were probably itching to be plugged into other projects. Were you able to use any of that information for other things?
There's a portfolio of puzzles that we can always draw from if need be. Nick and I went on to, we were able to, work together on various things over the years since then. More on Nick, a little on Dark Detour, and we worked on a live escape room TV show that got canceled, which sad to say. The thing is with this is like there's a vocabulary, and Nick had done ARGs, before we met, and so we kind of knew the same vocabulary. We spoke the same language as far as this sort of thing goes, because it's a very specific format to tell a story, right? It's like you're sprinkling breadcrumbs around for people to find and play a game of connect the dots, as opposed to just like telling a story. You're letting people find the evidence in the story, and basically the audience then tells each other. They tell the story to each other, as opposed to us telling the story to them.
Oh man, it's been so fun seeing, how the ARGs, it really brings together, like when you see a Discord community like the Mesmer and Braid one, you go, this is a microcosm for what's possible out there in the world. Is people actually, eliminating the idea of competition and just simply going cooperation, collaboration, and turning up the volume on each other's encouragement and findings, and going, ooh, you went in that direction. Ooh, look what you found. Okay, let's dig further in that direction. And it was just such a satisfying feeling when you got people in there who are just, their love is playing around in imagination, and their love is expanding it further and farther and going, ooh, what else is there? And ooh, let's see what other directions we could go in. I noticed, Nick, that you worked on an ARG at the Overlook Film Festival, right? Was that crazy to introduce this crowd of people who might not have ever been, used to anything like this before? And you go, okay, we're just going to drop this bomb.
Every project has its own limitations and kind of conditions that you accept at the beginning. And man, by comparison, Mesmer and Braid looked like a very open canvas, because when you're doing an event that is almost entirely live with almost no digital component. And so everything is actually spread out on a functioning city. And not only do you only have 3 days in which to deliver everything you need to deliver, you have people,
oh my God,
the players are running around a functioning city, and you need to make sure they don't die while they're playing your game. And so we had actors placed at various locations throughout New Orleans. And, that's a situation where you really have to be responsive to what people are doing, because quite frankly, not even just the players, but the partnerships you set up at local businesses may end up falling through at the last minute. And if you have kind of a linear puzzle chain where players need to get from one place to another, if someone backs out at the last minute, you have to either patch up the 2 puzzles on either side of it, or you need to fundamentally find a new home for stuff that you designed for a very specific type of location, because we had stuff, we wanted it to be like it was supposed to be in the space that it was in. And that was a huge opportunity, a huge challenge. And thank God no one was hurt playing the game, and none of the puzzles broke, which honestly was the biggest concern. It's just that some link in this 3-day chain was going to break, and we didn't have one link break. So I was very
live events, man. Live events are a whole other ball of wax.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
Whoa, man.
Yeah,
that's like a quest. That's like a quest where you got to travel through the forest and hop over the crocodile pond and all that stuff. I mean, this is crazy, because it must have just kept you on edge and on alert that whole time, and you must have felt so proud of yourself to be able to pull off an entire reality within the reality.
No, it was very satisfying to be able to have survived the weekend. But it was a weekend of no sleep, and it was a unique type of challenge that I'm very glad that festival has treated as a kind of rotating repertory of featured artists. So not to say that I would never go back and do another one for them, but I love this idea that they are inviting different creators to give their spin on the immersive game every year. And so you can have this kind of anthology feeling of what are different flavors of experience. Because the type of flavor, I designed that with Scott Gillies, and his and my sensibilities are very different from anyone who's ever designed for that festival. And, it really was not in the vein of what they had done before. And I don't think it's in the vein of what they've done since. And, I just love that idea that you're going to get different people's styles coming through, because who wants to do the same horror type experience every single year? I think variety is an excellent spice for this kind of thing, because you don't want to come travel to a festival every year and do the same type of thing every single time.
Well, geez, the ARG, it opens up the possibility to all those kinds of collaborative mindsets that are so honed in and let's see, exercised or rehearsed with the idea of, let's say, the gamers who have to, their minds are used to collaborating with each other. They're okay, you hide over here, and okay, I'll go in there and I'll plant the bomb, and there's a collaborative spirit going on. Or Dungeons and Dragons, there's another one. And for you guys to, it's so funny, Steve. I was explaining to my friends the other day about how the Mesmer and Braid ARG and how the HoloVista games, it's like a theme park for your mind, And then I saw on your website that you design theme parks, and so it's funny because the whole ARG experience is bringing people. It's like you're allowing them the opportunity to play almost like a real life video game as they are the character, and then also just kind of suspend the disbelief, that you're standing in front of, here's a pirate. Like, for instance, in yours, Steve, you did this one called Banana Quest. And I saw a little video where these people came up to a guy who's playing a little accordion thing, or whatever those called, concertina or something. And they're like, "Oh, tell me the story of the forgotten wand," or something. He's like, "And here's the story of the forgotten wand," and he starts playing the song. And I thought, man, that is so kick-ass. Like, it takes a certain kind of mindset to just go, "Hey, you know what? That guy must be part of the puzzle. Let's go talk to him."
Anytime you get to do stuff with pirates, it's a win as far as I'm concerned. So, and plus it made it a little easier to pick them out in a crowd, right? So it's like, oh, there's the pirate, but that was a lot of fun, kind of a global treasure hunt, and that was us trying to just kind of take the game mechanic from the game and just like put it out in the real world if we could, and it worked out.
You guys, it's so neat. This reminds me so much of those like murder mystery dinner theaters, or the like in Chicago they have one called Tony and Tina's Wedding, where it's like you're going to someone's wedding and a bunch of improv actors in there. And Renaissance Fair also comes to mind. And I'm thinking, holy cow, you guys, I could just imagine like a bunch of you kind of masterminds, or even just the two of you guys, because each one of you is like equal to 10 other masterminds just unto yourself. But you get a group of these people to come up with some sort of like almost like a Renaissance Fair kind of experience, that goes on for that week, but those kinds of ARGs that are implemented within that world that's already there. You already got all these people dressed up as, knights. And,
I think that's the thing that Nick and I have going for us, is that our background, we do have a lot of kind of immersive theater, theme park fandom in our backgrounds, right? And ARGs to me is kind of just a natural extension of that sort of mindset, that sort of thinking. To me, it serves itself really well. In fact, you talk about the theme park. I mean, it reminded me of Evermore, that I know Nick got to. You're talking about this kind of immersive theme park where it is all that people are trying to. They're doing stuff in that realm to try and. It's still very nascent. What's going to work and what is a theme park anymore? What can we do? How can we translate this to the real world in a fun way?
Right. And I think that's the key. Like you said, the thing that makes it still nascent is so many of these experiences have been connected to something else as a kind of supportive element. It's a barnacle on a much bigger ship. And so the idea of designing, like if you design an ARG for like a Renaissance festival, you might be able to get some traction, but people are fundamentally there for different reasons. And so your design is necessarily limited to support that experience and not overtake it. But when you have these places or events like, live action role play that people do, particularly in the Nordic countries, that are destinations specifically for the purpose of play and specifically for the purpose of interaction. That was what got me so fired up about the idea of Evermore and the idea of these essentially theme parks that don't have rides. I mean, Evermore does have one ride now. It has a train, so technically it does have one ride. But, the idea of why it was built was for this type of experience, for quests, for character interactions, for improvisation, for that type of thing to be the center of it. I think that has to be the next step, because if it's a game that you're playing while you're at a theme park, that's not why most people go to a theme park. And if you're in a family environment and you really want to just go hard and do nothing but play this game, it's going to detract from the rest of your family's experience. And so the idea of destinations that are curated specifically to enable this type of play, I think, has to be the next phase of this in order to define itself on its own 2 feet, rather than as a kind of campaign connected to some other endeavor.
Well, the Star Wars hotel is going to be interesting to watch in that space, I think.
Ooh. Gosh, which is interesting, because what are they going to have, like Greedo walking around?
Who knows?
Just walking past.
Well, I mean, Greedo. I don't mean to break any news here, but Greedo is dead.
No.
What's his? What are
they are the Rodians
called? I think I.
Yes.
Oh, the Rodians.
But yeah, no. Greedo was mercilessly gunned down by a terrible man.
Mercilessly. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, gunned down by Harrison Ford. Yeah. That'd be funny if it was actually Harrison Ford. So now tell me more about this.
Okay, yeah, no, I believe they still call themselves an experience park. It's in Utah, and they built essentially, imagine, your idyllic fantasy village, and it has different buildings, and it's a hub-based park, and you've got gardens, you've got, you've got the different, all the buildings you would expect to have in a little fantasy village, and basically nightly they have characters that will roam, and you can interact with them. And I think at this point in their life, it's still a very improvisational endeavor, but I don't think it's hard to imagine it becoming a very structured, kind of curated narrative experience. And, I just think that I would love to see these all over the country. So I'm personally vested in Evermore becoming a very successful endeavor. Yeah, and just on a physical level, it's beautiful to walk around in a fictional space that is not a waiting room for a roller coaster. Right. Yeah, and there's not a gift shop attached to the end of it. Absolutely. You're just like there for the pure reality of it. Which reminds me of one of my big dreams is that my future billionaire is going to do is he's going to buy some land and actually make a real life Twin Peaks. That's been one of my big dreams. And so because now you guys are it's so crazy because I didn't know how the heck I was really going to plan it out, but now that I know you guys can help.
Absolutely.
You guys will be paid handsomely, of course. But I'm thinking you got, people in there walking around. You got a Dale Cooper guy, you got a log lady. And so you actually have these characters there and little mysteries you got to solve. I heard about this one, which reminds me of this restaurant that my friends had gone to. And the restaurant had little clues and little things. Like rather than just having dinner there, the whole restaurant kind of was a theme park of sorts because there were little secret passages to open and panels to find the answers to, and then you'd have to be like, oh, excuse me, sir, he's eating his cheeseburger, and you're, oh, excuse me, I got to read this question over here, and then everyone starts sort of being a part of the experience, and meeting new people. It was just such a neat idea, and I thought, man, I want to do that with. Could you imagine an entire world like that, like a Lynchian type of?
Absolutely, that would be a resort for those who love the abstract.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Oh my God, man! I just you got Angelo Badalamenti music just pumped through.
Everybody talks backwards.
Oh my God. Exactly. Yeah, you got the red room. You have to go into the curtains. Everyone's speaking backwards. So now I want to ask you guys about this. How long did it take for you to plan let's talk about development stage. How long was the development stage for Mesmer and Braid? Well,
I have my notebook right here, and the first call that we had when we were commenced was at the beginning of May. So, yeah, that was.
Whoa!
Yeah, May.
Whoa!
May 4th, 2020. That was the first day.
Holy cow! Holy cow!
Yeah.
You guys did that fast, man. There's a whole lot of.
We had to. That was.
You guys did that fast.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. What the hell? What you guys pulled off is like something that you'd have like a think tank of people trying to rattle their brains over for months at a time, trying to figure out which.
I actually think that
into a frenzy right away.
The fact that it was just basically the two of us on the ARG was to our advantage as far as being able to do stuff really quickly and toss ideas around. And Ak and I was great. They were very supportive. They gave us a lot of freedom to kind of play in their story world. So there was a lot of trust there. It wasn't like a typical client relationships I've had where, you got to go through every step. There's approval rounds that, they have to approve everything. They've got all sorts of notes, all sorts of changes, very quickly they would just review things and just love it and just be like, in case something broke. But a lot of it, the backstory, it was all headcanon to them. I mean, so they gave Nick and I the freedom to kind of develop that backstory. We were pretty autonomous in a lot of ways, and they loved what we came up with. They didn't, so they weren't like married to ideas, and they were just, they just set us off, gave us the ball, and let us run with it, which was great.
Yeah, that was one of the great pleasures of it was, and honestly, what probably made this so smooth of a process is, they really were open to us doing whatever we wanted with the backstory of the company. But we kind of took it as a personal challenge to take everything that they told us as just an off-the-cuff idea as their own headcanon, as what if it was canon? We basically started from, well, what if we could just deliver something that completely filled in the gaps of what they've already been thinking about it, even though they said we didn't have to do that. They said, you can do whatever you want. This is just what we thinking.
That's great.
That was totally that was exactly what we wanted to do. Yeah, and it created some mathematical issues. When they kind of ran down, the company was founded here, and then Mesmer and Braid, live now. They're alive now. I said, well, that means he's a junior, and there was a senior who started the company because there's no way that this is a single generation story. And so that's kind of where the idea of making it a story about legacy and making it a story about kind of the regrets of an artist who really was trying to push the boundaries, and then you see the recurrence of that in modern day. And so this son of a genius who is seeing his wife, who is a genius, kind of repeat some of the same mistakes his father made. I thought there was an inherent drama for that, and basically giving a justification for, well, why would this guy create this puzzle trail to allow the players to learn a secret? And the answer was, if he just told everybody about his dad, that would be perceived as a threat to his wife's work. And so we wanted to have this kind of inside group who was close to him and knew the truth and said, well, if someone seeks the truth, we at least want it to be available to them. We don't want it to be locked away forever, because we think we want this context, because, in the light of day, you can appreciate the nuance of the ups and downs of a company that's existed since the late 1800s.
Wow. And it's cool too to see all the different logos that you guys have placed. That's what was really cool, to see the newspaper clippings, to see the magazine articles. I immediately started looking online because I would not have put it past you guys to have a website for those magazines that those clippings were from. I'm like, whoa. I was just like, it was crazy just how you made it so particular to those decades that they were in. Like the one Mesmer and Braid font I remember it kind of looked like Star Wars, like a Star Wars font. Like, how everyone kind of jumps on certain bandwagons during the time, and they're like, oh, this seems to be popular. Let's kind of do our thing in that font to kind of, use that subliminal signaling in the back of their brains. Like, it's like Star
Wars.
It is
a lot, also
so
the
cool.
idea that when you look back at company logos in certain decades, it is amazing the sameness that starts to occur very quickly.
Yeah.
And what typefaces will come into vogue, or at least just what letter forms, if they're completely custom hand drawn, they really are completely bracketed into these periods of time. And so obviously for a project like what we're doing, we use that as shorthand to completely say, okay, there was this phase of the company, this phase of the company, and this phase of the company.
Yeah, it was just so cool. It's like when you look online, you see all the different, incarnations of the Pepsi logo or whatnot, and it's cool because it just adds that legitimacy. Like you're looking through the fiche in the.
We're always looking for ways to show, not tell. Which is a challenge when you look at things in in history, and you don't want to just have like, oh, here's a blog or here's a letter to read, right? It's a lot more fun to. I remember I was really early in my youth. I was really intrigued by this story that was all written through a check ledger. Somebody had written a bunch of checks, and you could kind of tell a story by reading. Just basically, these were checks written out to people for certain amounts and certain days, and a story would come out of that. So it's a lot more fun to like come across.
Right.
Again, it's like an archaeologist comes across these pottery shards, and he can put together a story based on the evidence of gas station receipts. Oh, this puts this person there, or
it's a beautiful form, and even though it's given new life in the alternate reality game context, it's given the resolution of reality, even if it's just digital reality. It's given that inherent, it lives where you live, and so that's a very attractive thing. But the idea of telling a story through the in-universe objects or in-universe correspondence, I mean, that's an idea as old as fiction itself.
Yeah.
The earliest novels were epistolary novels, and they were stories told through correspondence, letters back and forth. And there's always been that draw to what's between the lines, because if there's not a third person narrator telling you the context of what these characters are not saying, you as the reader are invited to make those connotations yourself. And it immediately makes it more personal to you. And so there is something so wonderful about saying, this story that I know was not told to me, I pieced it together myself. And there's a sense of ownership that comes with that. And that's why I was drawn to playing ARGs as much as making ARGs, was that I always was drawn to that process of involving yourself. And when an author allows you into the world, that's not something every author is willing to do. They're not willing to say, hey, I've made a place for you to exist. Because when you make a place for the audience to exist in the fiction, that represents letting go of a little bit of control and saying, this is safe for you to play in. And so I took every invitation I was possibly given like that. And it's just a very compelling way to tell a story.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Steve Peters, and you're listening to Inspirado Projecto.